Greetings everyone, it's I22 and I have a long video for you today, and I haven't had much sleep because I've been up all night until like 6 in the morning finishing reading Oathbringer, which was like 1,230 pages. I thought the last book I read, Words of Radiance, was the longest book I'd ever read, but I forgot about Stephen King's Unabridged The Stand, which was like 1,500 pages. So I guess this is now the second biggest. And then I realized at the beginning that he says Edgedancer was a novella that you're supposed to read first, right? So Edgedancer, I downloaded that on ebook and read it in a day. I think it said it was like 300 pages, but I can't read 300 pages in a day, so I don't know if my ebook reader had more words per page or something. I don't know, but I just read it in one night. It was really good. So, I should talk about Edgedancer first, I guess. Edgedancer, this is the UK cover. It's about a girl. She's one of these knights radiant, supposedly. I have a theory about that. Also, these Stormlight Archive books, people that read them, we're kind of like in an exclusive club that only other people that read them know what the hell you're talking about, because they're so big that you have to dedicate a lot of time to it in order to, let's say $816. What? Oh, $16. The dollar sign. So the character they introduced last in Words of Radiance is called Lift. And she's from a place in Carbranth or somewhere. No. The Middle Eastern kind of place. Azir. That's the place where you write essays and you can become the emperor if you're like the smartest person or something. But they got this assassin in white going around killing everybody. So he killed the previous emperor. So it's a short story about Lift, and the reason I don't think she's a Knight's Radiant is because they all suck in stormlight from these storms that light up these balls or whatever they're called, spheres. She does it different. She eats food and she metabolizes stormlight. So I think he's just calling it stormlight, but it's actually something else, because there's a lot of things in the universe are based on three things, like the gods. Or there's three gods instead of one or two. So I think she's like a different kind of thing. I'll tell you why. So Oathbringer follows the story of Dalinar mostly. The last one was Shallan. The first one was Kaladin. Remember in the first book I mentioned there was like this Midnight Mother and this Night Watcher, and they're kind of like weird, unmade Spren are like the spirits of the world that anytime emotional things happen or crazy things happen, they pop up because they're attracted to things in this world. So, I wish I had Microsoft Paint up, and I ain't going to do that. You got your physical realm. Let's go back to full screen for a second. You got your physical realm, it's one line. And your cognitive realm is another line. And the spiritual realm, where the gods live, is another line. So these are all like three layers of the world that exist parallel to each other, right? On top of each other. You got your humans and your parshmen on the top. And then you got your Spren, unmade, and all these kind of weird spirits in the cognitive realm that they call Shadesmar. Rothar is the land, Shadesmar is the cognitive realm, and then you got your spiritual realm underneath it where the gods live. I don't know what that's called. So if you want to go between these realms, I think you can do it kind of with soul casting. You can see the spirit in the cognitive realm, because Jasna was in the shipwreck and they stabbed her in the gut. You thought she was dead, but she ended up coming back because what happened was she teleported into Shadesmar, and they didn't really explain like how she got out, but they could do a whole novella explaining how Jasna got out of Shadesmar. But it says that these perpendicularities, so imagine like a perpendicular line running down between those three parallel lines. So that's how you travel between these three different realms. And Dalinar, at one point, he says his Words of Radiance, and he levels up, and he like pulls one of these perpendicularities between all three realms and connects them. I'm getting snot in my nose when I'm trying to make videos every time. I'm over this cold. I shouldn't be getting that. Anyway, it follows Dalinar, and there's a flashback. I don't want to like get ahead of myself, but so Dalinar has always been talking about the thrill of battle and shit, and that turns out to be like this thing that this bad god is using to corrupt people and corrupt Spren and Voidbringers and whatever else. So there's a flashback to when he had this big drinking problem. That's like a big part of the story, is like him dealing with his issues with it. Like, you remember he couldn't remember his wife's name because he went and visited the Night Watcher, and he asked her to. You think he asked her to forget about killing all these people because he was like this crazy warrior. They do a flashback where he goes to this place they call the Rift, Ravelar or something like that, and they trick him and they tell him that his friend Sidious has been there and betrayed him, and he's like trying to take over the High Princes or something. So it tricks him and he goes after him, and it's a trap, but he ends up. They kill a bunch of his soldiers, but he survives, and then he. I'm getting way off in the Oathbringer. I should still be talking about Edgedancer, but like I'm trying to explain my theory here. So he goes back. And he gets his soldiers and he says, we've got these soul casters. You know, you can make them into different things, like different gems. One gem can make them into like grain or oil. And he says, get the soul casters. We're going to fuck them up. We're going to like go scorched earth on them. And like, what are we going to need grain for? He's like, no, we're not making grain. We're making oil. I want you to make all this oil. Rift, or whatever it's called, Ravelar is built on this wooden foundation. So he's going to burn that fucker to the ground. And just kill all the women, kill all the children, and just fucking scorched earth it, right? And he does that, and he's hearing all these screams of these women and children, and then somebody comes and tells him, like, well, that doesn't make sense. They would have known before. Like, somebody comes and tells him, like, your wife went in there to negotiate, and they took her prisoner. He's killed his wife and burned her to death, so he's hearing his wife screaming and shit. That's why he went to the Night Watcher to get all this. He's having all these memories, and he's drinking to get rid of the memories, so he goes to the Night Watcher. And he asks for forgiveness. That's not a thing that they can do. The Night Watcher is like an old witch that lives in the woods, but she lives in the desert. And there's this like little valley that prevents the storms from getting there. God damn, my nose is fucked up every time I'm trying to make one of these videos. The more I talk, the more it like pulls pressure up into my nose or something. So it's kind of like this valley full of plants, trees, and stuff that wouldn't even exist on the eastern side of the world, but they're like all crammed in there trying to fight for space. He says it's like a war, frozen in like all these plants fighting for each other. So you have to like hack through it with his storm blade or his shard blade. What is a storm blade? That sounds cool. And she's like this ghostly green spirit with extra long arms crawling along the ground, hovering kind of above the ground. So she's a Spren. Like an unmade. There's like 9 or 10 of these unmade Spren, like special. And so she can't grant his forgiveness request. So this other being appears, and that's like the god of cultivation, right? And she like gets rid of his memory of his wife and all the screaming and stuff. But she says it's going to grow back eventually. So it's not like a permanent thing. She's like pruning him. Because she's a cultivation god, like plants and shit, right? So, back to Edgedancer. There's a scene where Lift meets Dalinar, and she says something like, you've been touched by cultivation too, haven't you? Or something like that. So, there was, I don't know what Lift's story was with the cultivation god, but she's like, she eats things, and she gets this energy from it. Not like Stormlight, and not like Void Light, which is a new thing that you learn about the Parshmen have. They can fly, similar to the Windrunners, but different. They kind of hover differently, so it's like they're not. Their surge bindings are different. So I'm thinking lifts. She does like regrowth and what was it? Let me find some pictures here. She's an Edgedancer, so that like you combine different things, abrasion and progression. So she has like. Friction is abrasion. I don't know what progression is. Maybe that's the regrowth one. Yeah, so she can kind of... She can make plants appear? No, that's what her little Spren does. Anyway, Edgedancers are supposed to be kind of like ice skaters. Like, they put this energy in their feet and they slide around really all graceful like. Here's a picture of one depicted. So they got these shard blades. Everybody has a shard blade, but they also have this ability over friction, so they can just slide around and like you can't catch them. Super fast. She's a good thief, that kind of thing. So, I don't know if she's like a real Edgedancer or she's like this other thing, like a cultivation version, because she can't really do the ice skating thing. She slides around on her knees. It's a little different, and she just kind of barrels into stuff. So I'm wondering if this is some kind of secret. Maybe they'll explain it in the next book. I haven't read it yet. Here's a picture also of the city she's going into, like, steal something. She ends up doing this miracle, I think, and her friend. They're both like gutter rats, or what do you call them? Like, I don't know, poor people that live on the streets, right? She's a street urchin, right? They end up making her friend like the emperor because she's thinking like he performed a miracle, he can survive the assassin in white. That's all they really cared about. And whenever she uses her powers, they say she became awesome. So that's how they explain that. They don't say she used Stormlight. They say she became awesome. And she slid around, and she... here's some more pictures depicting Lift. There's a bunch of pancakes. She has to eat to get her energy to do stuff. I kind of see her as a combination of the Potato Girl from Attack on Titan and Tiny Tina from Borderlands. That's what Lift is like. That's her personality. Look at this fucking picture. Just pancakes and just slipping and sliding. That's what it was. It was a pretty short book, so it's pretty easy to read. So that's Edgedancer, okay? Now, I thought I was on my browser this whole time. I thought I was showing you all these pictures. Son of a biscuit. Anyway, going back. Here's Tiny Tina. Here's the Potato Girl from Titan. Here's a bunch of pancakes. And here's a bunch of pancakes. And here's some, like, that's not a very good drawing. She's like slipping and sliding and eating pancakes with this. Her sprint is like a vine. It grows like crystalline vines. That's pretty good art right there. That could be a book cover. Here's another one. So that's basically what the first book is about. The little novella. It's about Lift. She breaks into the Emperor's palace and shit. She's trying to steal something. I can't remember. There's Calden. Pretty cool pictures. So then Oathbringer. Let's look at some Oathbringer pictures and talk about this. The inside the cover photos were kind of weird. Look at this one. This one looks like a YouTuber or somebody, I can't think of who. But it's, I think this is supposed to be down there. Right? He's got a crown on. I don't know. This sword doesn't make sense. This, I think, is his wife, Navani. She's got keys and chopsticks. That doesn't really make sense with any of the characters. What are these ones? That's probably Taravangian, and that's maybe Shallan, because she's a light weaver, but it doesn't look like Shallan. I don't really get the pictures on the inside. Check this out. This is kind of like the swords. Remember if we're talking about the shard blades and how they're all... The shard blades are actually weak because they're made out of the spirits of dead spren. And when you become a Knight Radiant, you make your own shard blade out of a living high spren that is, you've attracted and bonded with you, and they can take different forms. You can make like a spear over here, or a blade, or she can turn into a shield or a halberd. She can turn them whatever you want. The shard blades, they just summon them and they scream because they're dead. If you're a Knight Radiant, you touch one, you just hear the screaming of the dead spren inside. And they can still cut through anything though, and they can just kill people if they cut them in their spine. But here's a picture of Dalinar when he's making that perpendicularity. There's a great final battle at the end. So this book is like 1,200 something fucking pages, so it's going to be... There's a lot of stuff that happens. There is... It starts out, remember in the last book, Adolin had stabbed Stadius in the eye and killed him. There's a whole like detective arc where he's like going around with Shallan trying to figure out who killed him, even though he knows it was himself. But there's also this unmade spren in Urithiru, which is basically what the whole first part of the book is about. Like, they're exploring Urithiru, they're learning its secrets, there's this weird kind of column with gemstones on it that this unmade, like, sprint is there. They have to kind of scare it off and fight it off. And then they can't figure out what it does or how to put Stormlight into it. And I think it's all kind of connected to the whole city. It's kind of like Stargate Atlantis. Like, they got all these kind of weird metal structures and gem things that are like throughout the whole place that you can probably like lift it up off the ground and fly it around. And who knows what this city does? The Theater is like this magical hub city in the middle of the world. And there's the unmade Spren that's there is doing this thing where whenever somebody murders somebody, it murders somebody else in a similar way. So it doubles up on all your murders. So somebody else got stabbed in the eye, like Sidious. So like, that's weird. I didn't do that. I just killed Sidious. So Alan's going around trying to figure out what happened. I think there was another. Later on they get to Thalen City. I think there's 2 unmade sprints there. I think it's supposed to be like 9 total. Counting the Night Watcher and the Midnight Mother, that one and those 2, that makes like 5. I'm trying to keep track of all this stuff. So basically, there's another arc where they try to. Kaladin. He goes around with the Parchment for a long time. And he kind of studies them. He like acts like he's hanging out with them and teaches them things for a while. And he realizes the Parchment are not really wanting to fight back. They're not like evil Voidbringers, all of them. The ones that were on the Shattered Plains. Like the first 2 books take place in just in a little spot of the world, Shattered Plains. This book kind of opens up to Irithiru, Shattered Plains, Kholinar, where the Lethe Knights are from, Kharbranth, Thalen City, and they're traveling around between these oath gates that let you teleport between certain places if they're unlocked. And then you also have this whole arc where they get trapped in Shadesmar, and that's a really long part of the book. So they go to save Kholinar with the king, Dalinar, Shallan, Adolin, a few others maybe, I think. Maybe that was all. There's like 6 people. 2 of his other squires. Like you have Knights Ready, and they have the bridge crew, they end up being his squire. And they kind of, some of them become Knights Ready at the end. But they kind of can have some of his abilities while he's around, right? So they try to save Kholinar, and they try to get to the Oathgate. There's this whole cult running the place. Because there's 2 unmades there. One of them is like, what's that god of like feasting and revelry? Yeah, there's a revelry unmade there, and there's another one. And it ends up they get like overtaken by the Void bringers, but they're not really Void bringers. This is where it gets fucked up. So they get sucked into Shadesmar because it was a trap. The Oathgate was trapped, right, by the Unmade. And he sides with him and doesn't kill him. He sends him to Shadesmar instead. So the whole Shadesmar deal is like land is water and water is land in the real world. It's reversed. So all of the spirits of things, like anything, rocks, sticks, trees, houses, whatever, they're all like these tiny beads, and they make up the ocean that is the land in the real world. But in Shadesmar, it's an ocean of beads. The water in the real world is like obsidian black glass that you can walk on. And your shadow goes towards the sun instead of away from it. But I guess there's still light there, so it's kind of like you can see. It's not like all dark. There's these ships that kind of float around in the sea of beads and Spren that are like people that they hire ships for. And it's like some of the Void Bringers are there in that world too. It's really weird. Like they have to summon things to walk on, and it's like it just takes a really long time. It's just like they finally get out in Thalen City at the end. Oh, there's also this Azure woman that was like the guard on the wall in Kholinar. She gets sucked in there with him, and she's like a Knight Radiant, but she's got this weird sword that's like one of these honor blades. Remember, like you got your regular shard blades, you got your living shard blades, then you got your honor blades. Like if you're holding an honor blade, it gives anyone the ability of that surge bind that it's connected to. So like the assassin in white, Sith Son Volano, he had the one that if you hold it, you can become a Windrunner. You can do Windrunner shit. just by having the sword. So, yeah, Kaladin actually gave that sword to his crew to train with while he wasn't, or Dalinar gave it to him because he had it. And, yeah, Sesson Villano, he comes back and he gets like this special sword that's like has black smoke and it kind of destroys anything that's evil, but it starts to corrupt him the more he uses it, so he has to like sheath it before it takes him over. And he becomes like a Skybreaker. The Knights Radiant are kind of like when you play, what was that game? What was that game that had all like the different skill? The classes were based on two different things. Arcage. Like if you combine this and this, then you're this, a Dark Runner, or you're a Lightbringer, or whatever. If you could do, there's 10 different surges, right? If you do the first two, you're a Windrunner. Number 2 and 3, you're this, an Edgedancer, or whatever. 3 and 4, you're a Truth Seeker, which is what Renelin was. This one and this one, Soul Casting and Light Weaving, you're a Light Weaver or something like that, right? That's cool. Like this whole class system. But then at the bottom, there are these 2 surges that are like strong and weak axial force or something you can control. So that's like nuclear fusion, sounds like. It sounds like the strong and weak nuclear force. So I don't know if you're going to be able to like split apart molecules. Like Jasna, she is a soul casting and something. Oh, Else Caller is what she's called. And she apparently, when she was in Shadesmar, she just leveled the fuck up because she just, when this big battle starts happening, she just starts like creating stuff out of thin air. She's like soul casting air molecules into stairs. That's her on the cover. I didn't realize. I thought that was Shallan with her veil persona or something. I was trying to figure who that was the whole time. She's like she's fixing the walls with like bronze. She's like summoning whole walls and walls of fire and void spinner flying through. And she's burning them up, and then she's just like just dismissing them into fucking smoke and shit. She's just like fucking shit up. She just becomes a badass, and then end up making her the queen of the world at the end because Adolin killed a man. He didn't want to be the king. Anyway. So the whole Shadesmar arc, it's kind of tedious, but they end up getting out of there this final battle. But what else happened between then? A lot of Dalinar stuff, a lot of political stuff, a lot of like getting these kings united and trying to like get their forces all together, and then they all kind of lose faith at the end because they find out Dalinar was, or the old king that died had named him the High King, so they thought he was kind of taking over the world, so they all just kind of like fucked off. Taravangian, the guy that hired the assassin and wanted to kill all these kings, he kind of told Dalinar about that. That was pretty cool. He's a weird guy. He had talked to the Night Watcher, and she'd give him the ability to be super smart, but only on some days. He's either like super dumb or super smart, or kind of in between. He has to like take a test that he wrote when he was smart in the morning to decide if he's smart enough to make political decisions for the rest of the day. It's pretty fucked up. But this final battle is pretty fucking dope. Where's that one picture at? There's one of these, or a couple of these things come out of the ground that are made out of like rocks. Giant spirits. See, that's Jasna making steps as she's going up. She's like, she didn't actually fight it at the end. It was Renelin killed one of them, I think. And then Adolin and this other guy that had sharp blades cut its legs off and stuff. It's pretty dope. There's a lot of fighting. One of the bridge crew, Teft, he had like this drug problem. There's a whole drug problem arc where he's got this fire moss that you rub between your fingers and you kind of smell it or something and it gets you high. So he got addicted to that. So one of his words of radiance, you're supposed to say like, I'll protect others even though those who can't protect themselves. And his word of radiance or whatever he says was like, I'll protect even those I hate, even if it's myself, if I hate myself or something like that. I don't remember. Pretty dope. He becomes like, he has like this crazy what do you call it? A naginata? Like a spear with a crossblade or something? So he's like another windrunner. It's going to be dope. Look at these pictures. I mean, this is so sick. It's like Diablo mixed with lightsabers. Or not really Diablo. I mean, there was this cartoon called Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table about this football team. They get sucked into a Dungeons and Dragons kind of a world, and they had like this armor with a symbol of a weapon on it, and they could summon it out and they could use it. It was dope. There's all these different weapons. That's what this is. There's all these different fucking weapons, dude. And some of them are stronger than the others, and some of them are, there's like spirits, like there's so many different kinds of spirits, the Spren, so many different possibilities there could be. Like when they went into Shadesmar, you would see like the Anticipation Spren or whatever there, you would think they're like these little tongues or whatever coming out of the ground. And then you get down there in the cognitive realm and you see that they're actually like giant frogs, that you're just seeing the tongues of the frogs come up out. You're not seeing the whole frog. So it could be like a whole giant spirit down there. You're just seeing like a tip. Just the tip, boys. You're just seeing the tip. And also, what was that about? The next book is called, Way of Kings turned out to be a book that existed in the world. Right? That's the one Dalinar's reading to try to become a good king. Words of Radiance is a book in the world that explains how the Knights Radiant work. And like you have to say these words of Radiance. It's a book in the book. Oathbringer, you find out at the end, is a book that Dalinar starts to write because he gets his wife to teach him how to read and write. So he starts making a book of his own called Oathbringer. So I'm wondering if Rhythm of War is going to be another book that's in the stories. That rhythm makes you think all these Voidbringers speak to a different rhythm of whatever emotion they're feeling. So you would think that the next book would be centered on one of these parchment. I don't know if it is or not, but here's another mind fuck. Spoiler alert. This is a huge fucking thing, right? So you got this wit guy. He's going around between the Cosmere, different universes. He's kind of an immortal god or something. Nobody knows what the fuck he is. But there was this book by Scalzi, John Scalzi, where he's describing these aliens as having like shades of darker white skin, large round eyes of various colors, and keratinous strands coming out of their head. So what did you just imagine when I said that? Some kind of like crazy like lizard alien with spiky hair or something like that. Keratinous. Keratin is hair. He was talking about humans the whole time. You're like, what? He was talking about us like an alien's idea of what a human is? That's all gross. We're gross aliens? Yep. So you're reading this book, 1,200 fucking pages, right? They've been fighting these parshmen that were slaves, and they get this Everstorm comes with the regular high storm, and they're combining, and the Everstorm is fucking up cities. Anytime you kill these parshmen, they get resurrected by the Everstorm, and they become fused, and they're flying around, and they're taking over the world. The world's kind of just littered with destruction and mayhem, and these new parshmen. I don't know what you should call them now, because what we find out is that fucking the Voidbringers, there's this whole other book. You know how there's like these little things at the beginning of the chapters? There's one that's based on this thing that Taravangian wrote. I forgot what it was called. It's like this whole, like, he figured a bunch of shit out when he was super smart. There's another one that's based on some other stuff. That was really cool. There's like a bunch of them. But he keeps going back to these death rattles from the first book. It's like people were dying and they're saying things on their deathbed. Like these death rattles have something to do with the overarching theme. I don't know how. I mean, this one ended up being so epic at the end that you'd think it would kind of winding things down. But there's supposed to be 10 books. And we're just on the 3rd book. So the 4th book, what's going to happen? I don't know. But you find out that the humans were the fucking Voidbringers the whole time. We were the bad guys. We were the bad guys. The humans must have came from outer space. They colonized Roshar That's why the planet doesn't look like anything that the humans have, like cows and chickens and grass and shit, right? That's why Shinovar, where all the Asian people live, the bald, like monk type people, that must have been where humans first settled, and then they moved across Roshar, and they ended up in the plains, the Shattered Plain kind of area, and started killing these chasm fiends and taking their gems and kind of making slaves out of the original inhabitants, like way back in the past. Humans were the fucking Voidbringers the whole time. The whole time it's saying like how bad they are. They don't have any heart, and they're ruthless, and they have no morals and all this kind of stuff. They're talking about humans. They're talking about us, boys. Whole time. So now, this whole war that's going on, you're like kind of rooting for the Alethi, but now you're like, fuck, we're the Americans coming to take over the Indians. We shouldn't be doing this. Kaladin is thinking this. He's like, I don't know if I want to help you guys anymore. We're the bad guys here. So they're trying to figure out a way to have peace, but the Parshmen, they've been slaves for so long, they're not going to fucking forgive the humans. They're like, some of them aren't. I don't know. Yeah. So I don't know what's going to happen. I think I had another theory. I'm trying to remember what it was about. So you got your... Honor is this god that died. He's a dead god. Kaladin Spren is an Honor Spren. The Stormfather, the Spren of the Storm, the Everstorm that comes across in the first book, he has been bound to Dalinar. He is a piece of honor, sort of. So it's like Stormlight and Surge Binding of like the Knights Radiant. You would imagine is kind of bound to honor, the god Honor. So then the Voidbringers, the Parshmen, we're actually the Voidbringers, but they call them the Voidbringers. The bad guys, they're not really the bad guys though, see? They use this Void Light, and this Odium is this god of passion, right? So Honor, Storm, something, Odium, Passion, Void Light, right? So you got Stormlight, you got Void Light. There must be something else on this other god that is cultivation and then I don't know, like food light. I don't know what you would call it. Metabolizing, metabolic something or other. Yeah, that's why I think everything comes in threes. You get your three gods. There might be some other kind of god that's above those three gods. I don't know. Once they go into the spiritual world, they can go there now. They get the perpendicularities. Maybe they'll figure this shit out. Maybe this stuff's already been explained in the next book. I don't know. I don't know. Makes you think, though. You can just sit around and kind of theorize, speculate. There's 10 books. What the hell is going to happen in 10 books? I mean, I figure they could make an anime about this. You couldn't do it with live action because there's too much crazy shit happening. The special effects budget would be insane. But I'm going to take a break from these books for one or two books at least. I'm definitely going to read Nosferatu now that I've got all weekend. It's still not Halloween yet. I'm going to start reading a scary book. And then I kind of want to start a Joe Abercrombie, but maybe I'll stay away from the fantasy. Maybe I'll read another one of those Expanse books or something. And then go back and read Rhythm of War. And then, once I get done with that, hit the Joe Abercrombies really hard. Or, what is my other option? Liza Lamora, could do that. Oh, world's my oyster after that. Once I get these fucking Stormlight books done, holy shit. I was planning on reading like 30 books this year. I think I'm on target for that. But like these Stormlight books are as big as 3 or 4 books each. So I feel like I'm actually reading like 50 books a year. If I was reading Dean Koontz, I could read like 60 books a year. But, I don't know. Goals. Yeah, this will be a sick fucking anime. Oh, I could also read Will of Ascension. I can do another one of the Mistborn trilogy. That's too much Sanderson. I'll wait a half a year or something and get back into it. I gotta calm down on the Sanderson. Anyway, fucking epic 10 out of 10. Edgedancer. Maybe not 10 out of 10. It's just a novella. But Oathbringer is fucking... So much stuff happens in it. I mean, I've only touched the surface of all the stuff that happens in it. You just kind of got to sit with it and like so much things. You kind of you have to be there. You either read it, you understand it, or you're just going to be like, "What the fuck are you talking about?" That's how I was. And everybody kept talking about these books. They kept saying you can't explain them. It's like it's too hard to explain. It's too much world building. It's unlike any fantasy novels you've ever read because there's no dragons and it's not really like medieval kind of. Well, it kind of is medieval, but we came from space and we got freaking lightsabers. We're the bad guys. It's totally crazy. Shard fiends and chasm fiends and shard storms and blade blights and traveling, light weaving, storm seeking truth blades. It's crazy.